We've been warning you about this for almost a year here at Nomad Capitalist. Back then, candidate Joe Biden threatened to not only raise income taxes on high earners, but raise capital gains tax, nearly double them in fact. And now President Joe Biden is apparently following through on all of his campaign promises to dramatically raise taxes on the so-called evil rich. I'm going to walk you through the proposal to nearly double the capital gains tax rate, show you how it may affect you, and tell you what I would do if I was facing this dramatic tax hike. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of this book, and I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors, the evil rich, according to Joe Biden and his administration, legally go where you're treated best. More at nomadcapitalist.com. So here's the deal. They always say elections have consequences, and now the consequence appears to be, according to some sources in the Biden administration and just the scuttlebutt in Washington and the news media, that the capital gains tax rate will be nearly doubling for anyone who dares to be successful. Now, I'm going to tell you why this $1 million threshold, it seems like a lot for some people, but it actually isn't that high. And so basically what they're going to do, what they're trying to push through, and what Joe Biden promised he would do, and what I think he will be able to push through because of this great folksy demeanor that he has. Do you see? You can say it's the news media being biased, you can say whatever, but it seems like people tend to, they like this Joe Biden. He's just going to slide some things through, including nearly doubling your capital gains tax rate. So his promise, which is now being put into fruition, it seems, it was to raise the capital gains tax rate to basically the income tax rate. He wanted to go from the small reductions that Trump had. I think he went down to 37%. He wants to put it back to the Obama and Clinton era top federal rate of 39.6%. Then he wants to add the existing Obamacare surcharge, so an extra 3.8%. Gives you a top rate of 43.4%. Now, the threshold for this is you've got to make a good amount of money. You've got to have some kind of $1 million income, $1 million gains. But let's stop and think about this. What does a capital gains tax rate apply to? We're not talking about short-term capital gains, which already had worse tax treatment. We're talking about long-term capital gains. What could that be? It could be stocks. It could be other investments. It could be cryptocurrency. It could be selling your business, right? Obviously, there are people who sell their businesses for 5 figures and 6 figures, but a lot of people are selling their businesses for 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures. You could sell your cryptocurrency. Maybe you bought 1 Bitcoin, right? Your taxes may not be that high. Let's say you bought 100 Bitcoin back when it was $1,000 each. If you sell that now, you're going to be well over that threshold. And so in this era where a lot of people are being successful in things like cryptocurrency, they're building businesses. A lot of folks started last year during the lockdowns. People have been building business long term. There's a lot of different ways that you could hit this $1 million threshold and bump your tax rate up on capital gains to this nearly 50% rate, which they've nearly doubled. And the news media was very quick to point out, because they're in New York and California, that those states' rates, by the time you're all said and done, could easily top 50%. So we're not talking about income. We're not talking about labor. What we're talking about is passive investments that theoretically you've made after you've already done the labor. You run a business, you pay taxes on the income all those years. High tax rates, potentially close to or even over half in some parts of the country. Now you finally want to cash in. You made your investment, you took your risk, now you want to cash in. And they're going to make it close to 50%. And so again, this threshold is not that difficult to meet. And what's clear to me is the days of cheap rates, lower tax rates on investment, saying we want to spur investment. We want to encourage people to start businesses and eventually, have those pay off for them, not only in terms of income from what they're doing running the business, but eventually be able to sell the business. And I've helped a lot of people who are selling businesses, who are selling investments that they bought at tiny prices. Now they're selling them at big prices that they want to sell. And the idea is I've taken all these risks. I've been paying taxes all along the way on my trading or any capital gains along the way or on the income, whatever. But basically what they're saying is, no more investment income, because it plays well with the public. They see, a guy like Warren Buffett and they say, well, of course he should pay more. And they don't see all the people that we're talking about, where you've already been paying along the way, and now you're just looking to sell the asset, and yet they want to take a huge bite of the apple now again. Now, let's talk about how this applies to aspiring nomad capitalists. One thing I've been trying to tell you guys for years, not only business owners, but cryptocurrency hodlers and everybody else, has been the great time to put together a nomad capitalist tax plan is when the chips are down and when the tax rates are low. And so we've had opportunities, especially here speaking to Americans, you had a little bit lower tax rates in the last couple of years. You had cryptocurrency prices that on a couple different occasions in the last few years took a real dive, and you could have left then. But what people want to do is they want to get all the money. How many times have I heard people say, when Bitcoin hits 100 grand, that's when I'm finally going to leave, or when my business reaches a certain level, that's when I'm going to leave. And that's fine. And if that's what's comfortable for you, that's fine. But understand it's going to be financially uncomfortable, because I can tell you, I recently had a conversation with several different people where I said, hey, you're doing fantastic. One guy was making like $1 million a month. And I said, but you've been piling up all this money. Now when you leave, there's going to be an exit tax. This doesn't apply to everyone, but it does apply to Americans. And so if you were going to move to Puerto Rico, for example, if you run a business, the longer you're running that business on the mainland, the lower your tax savings are going to be by moving to Puerto Rico on the exit. Cryptocurrency, the higher those prices go, the worse it's going to be on the exit, right? You don't just get to move to Puerto Rico. You don't just get to go offshore. You don't just get to renounce your citizenship and say, oh, that's great, I'm gone now. If you're moving to Puerto Rico, they're going to lock in how much time you spent building that business on the mainland. They're going to lock in the value of those assets when you move there. And so I have people who are living in Puerto Rico. They locked in, a $10,000 Bitcoin. Now they're going to sell at $50,000 Bitcoin, and then they're going to expatriate. And so they've got a great spread. But if they move there at $45,000 Bitcoin up to 50, their tax savings are a lot less. And so not only are you going to have a larger base to pay tax on the longer you wait, but tax rates are going up. And so there may not be that much more time to leave and say, I'll just pay the capital gains. Let me give you an example. Got a guy who has a business. It's worth about $40 million, okay? We know that because he actually has investors in the business who own a minority share, and it was relatively recent. Now, he's thinking of leaving the country. And I said, listen, if you want to do that, you have a amazing capital gain, tens of millions of dollars. You better leave quickly while you can pay in the 20s before you're paying in the 40s, right? So whether it's giving up your citizenship, whether it's moving overseas, whether it's moving to one of these tax havens, just the U.S. example is Puerto Rico, you don't wait until it's too late, because the cost to leave the country is about to double if this goes through. Not only might the value of your assets be going up, not only might the value of your investments be going up, but you're going to pay a higher rate. And so the difference between a couple months, because you are uncomfortable, is going to be substantial. This is why I've been telling people, get out while the getting's good. What I told you is, in 2017, I left the U.S. for good. I cut all my ties. I'm no longer subject to the rules, no longer have the citizenship. And I said, you know what? I figured with the way things were going, eventually they will come up with something even crazier than what they've done so far. The crazy will just keep going. And so the peace of mind of just knowing I'm out, better to be out years too early than a day too late. And I think some of you, unfortunately, are going to learn that when you go to, let's say, expatriate, just as an extreme example, and you have a business that has value, and you're going to pay twice as much in tax to leave because you didn't do it earlier. So what I would suggest is if you need to get second residences in place, second passports in place, other infrastructure that makes you feel comfortable, whether it's homes, bank accounts, whatever it is internationally that you need, that I would get started on now. And that's why I've been telling people increasingly over the last year to year and a half, if you're a Westerner who has a high income or a high net worth, I would be getting a second passport just to be protected, because I think what I'm going to see here in the coming months is people are going to see this news, they're going to start to freak out. We've been pretty busy here at Nomad Capitalist in the last year. We're not just, it's not just come in today, we'll serve you tomorrow. And people, by the time they get served, by the time they get their passport, by the time they get everything done, it may be too late. And I've seen that happen in our business before, where people really, they want to wait till the last minute. Are we sure the bill's going to pass? Better to act years too early than a day too late. Now, especially in the crypto community, right? Crypto capital gains, taxes, and the other. What do people say? Oh, I'll just borrow against my crypto. I remember a story, I've told this story before. I was in Turkey almost 10 years ago now, sitting next to a guy on a plane. The guy worked for the UN. I try not to talk to guys from the UN too much, but this guy I talked to. And I said, why don't you just come out with what you want? 20 years ago, I was growing up, I said, no one was talking about gay marriage. It was civil unions, and then it was just kind of gradually, advanced. And now in the Western world, gay marriages are the thing. And he said, yeah, because that's what people politically want. We like to spoon feed things to them. It's like the airline pilot when you're late. Folks will be 5 minutes late, and then another 5 minutes. If they told you the wing had fallen off the plane and you'd be waiting 4 hours sitting there in this uncomfortable seat, and then they'd kick you off and tell you to go stay in a crappy hotel and then take tomorrow's flight, you'd be pretty angry. But as long as they dish it out 5 minutes at a time, you feel great, right? And it's the same thing here. The next step will be the unrealized capital gains tax. The next step will be the wealth tax. They're already working. I've never seen a tax talked about in so many countries at one time than the wealth tax right now. With the backdrop of the pandemic as the great excuse to bring this out, their own fiscal mismanagement now becomes your problem. So they're just spoon feeding you. Now it's this, but don't worry, whether it's Joe Biden or the next guy, the unrealized capital gains tax, the wealth tax will be next. And so the idea of just borrowing against assets, I'm not convinced that works forever. Now maybe that delays your ability to, or delays the ability to not to pay these rates. But I do think eventually you're going to see this come into play. And again, if you ever want to exit the system entirely, the idea that your assets, which are still going up in value, you're still eventually going to be taxed at a higher rate. When you leave your country, whether it's a taxed non-resident of a country like Australia, Canada, etc., or when you give up your U.S. citizenship to detach yourself from that tax system, they're going to say, what do you have? What's the basis? Pay us. They're not going to say, oh, well, okay, as long as you're leaving, don't worry. We'll just pretend you never lived here. We're not going to tax you. It's not that easy in most cases. And more countries around the world are implementing these exit taxes, those that already have them. So to me, this is just the warning. This is just the next 5 minute, dishing out 5 minute more weight. This is just the next step. And for me, it means you want to have a plan. I've been saying it for years. It's the same plan. Have a place to live. Have a second passport. Have an escape hatch that if you have to push the eject button, you can. I'm not saying that you should. I'm not saying that you should leave your country just for tax reasons. I certainly didn't. But I think if you get out there and explore the world as well, you'll realize you'll find plenty of other places where you can live, that you don't have to rely on your one country. You don't have to cling to it with a claw as if you're going to wait until the last minute for them to come up with some new tax. And then when they pass it, it's too late. So that's the proposal. 43.4% capital gains tax if you're selling a business, selling your crypto, selling stocks, doing any kind of capital gains tax activity. I think it's time to heed the lessons that we've been talking about, that I've been thinking about for over 25 years, about how in the Western world, in the legacy brand countries, in the countries who are so proud that they are better than all the others, they are going to keep going down this path, and it is going to get worse and worse. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.